Hello and welcome to the dive.
Funny to you? Is it a joke, Kobe?
Yeah, you
get it together.
I don't know. It's funny.
Nothing going on here at the beginning of the setup. This is just a regular Honda-sponsored episode of the dive, season 5, episode 21. Welcome, my friends. Welcome, my friends. First order of business. Let's not waste any time because TSM did not waste any time in proving me correct. And I honestly, as soon as I made this bet, I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna win it.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't even think it was gonna be this quick.
I was like, this is a long, hard bet to win.
Explain the bet as well for viewers.
So for people who don't know, last week, Kobe and I bet that I said TSM would not drop out of first place by end of week. So, like they could maybe dip down and come back up. They had the potential to do that this week. If C9 dropped their final game, they would have been tied.
But this was for the whole season, by the way.
This was for the whole split.
Not just this week. And Mark, any percent speed ran the lost bet here. It could not have been lost more quickly.
This is like you're doing an 80% run, and then you just like biff the first jump, and you have to restart your run all over. So now I'm saying C9's gonna stay in first place. Who wants to take it? Starting my run over.
Honestly, I feel like we are gonna have a backlog of bets that we
No, I'm not doing this again.
we were like, okay, yeah, you'll probably like do a cosplay as well because Azael's got a backlogged cosplay bet that he.
But we're gonna make good on this, Mark.
Yeah.
We've decided Mark is doing a Lux cosplay with my Ezreal.
Yeah, the people ship those all the time together. So as co-hosts of the dive, we got to have some good league in universe pairing.
Got some synergy, exactly. Yeah. So Mark is gonna order one after the episode today, and then
is he gonna order one though? Because
Mark
with the quality of Mark,
for one.
I'm really cheap, so I'm gonna hit up all my friends who do cosplay and stuff, and be like, "Is anyone, many mutuals, got a?"
So as soon as you get that, we will do it.
Yeah.
So hopefully within.
I mean, it could be next week.
I think
I have mine.
So we need to put a timeline on it because if not, I feel like Mark will procrastinate longer and longer. And so if you haven't found one or bought one by this time, I feel like you have to make one. Just one of the budget cosplays.
I think I have a blonde wig from something else that I can just put that on.
His hair looks pretty blonde right now.
Yeah.
Could be longer.
I think it could be a lot longer.
Get some extensions. It'll be a good look.
You get them permanent.
Anyways,
my head.
That was easy. Do you have anything to say for yourself?
Why'd they pick Lucian twice? They don't win on it. They're like 1-4 all time. Like their win rate on control mages versus not control mages, even if you include things like TF as not a control mage, it's astronomically different. And they just screwed me right out the gate.
Not salty, by the way.
No, not at all.
I think now they do have enough Lucian data. They needed a little bit bigger sample size.
They're going to keep doing it so that they actually start winning on it.
They'll just wait. Next time Mark bets on them. Then they'll crack out the Lucian.
You know what? We need more data.
Thanks, guys.
Got an idea.
Thanks.
I'm gonna be sending Parth the DM
back in the lab.
Hey, you remember the Lucian strategy? I was really on board with you guys.
It was looking good. You guys should have committed to that. What are you thinking? All right. So Team Liquid also, unfortunately, when we did the last episode, they came out with their announcement immediately after that episode. Alphari was tweeting, TL was tweeting. There was some back and forth tweets.
All right.
He was tweeting. He was in there. And Alphari will be out until June 27th. We don't know what's going to happen after that, but that is a pretty big deal because when we were talking about TL on last episode, I was under the impression that it was like, this probably isn't going to last that long. Jenkins is going to come in, but like Alphari's too good to not play. They paid him too much money to not use him. And now with, at the very least, 2 more weeks or whatever of him being out, I'm like, well, is he even going to come back after that? Then you're pretty kind of far into the split. If they've been screwing with Jenkins, do they want to change it up? It feels like big news.
I think that he is not coming back. It really feels because of the follow-up one too, where you see the Team Liquid after all of the drama tweets and all the memes that came out of it. They then did a more explicit follow-up tweet where they even got permission from Alphari, they say in it, to state the reasons of motivation in addition to personal issues there. And it really does feel, especially with the back and forth and the memes that went down, and the rumors that had been circulating even pre-split before this, I do feel like this is a longer groove, even though I still it just makes me really want the camera inside. I want the reality show to be able to examine both sides and how everything was handled, because it still seems so crazy. He's like such a good top laner. I actually do think it is going to be, close to irreparable damage. So I think it's going to be lasting. What do you think?
I mean, maybe between coaching staff and player. I mean, the thing is that we're not exactly sure. Because it said, okay, attitude and performance, but it's also said because of personal issues, something seems to have happened. Yeah. And that's what I think the big mystery at the center is like, well, what happened to cause these other things? Because if it's something that's like very relatable and people can be like, okay,
you're going through a breakup.
Yeah, if it was relatable, I feel like in the explicit one, maybe they would have.
Well, I feel like if it's personal, like you're saying, that like they're not going to share that with the entire, like people don't need to know that. But if it's causing these other issues, I think people can mend that bridge easier than like, hey, you're just being an asshole. Yeah. Like for no reason. I feel like that's harder for people to
I agree with that. If you're going through grief, if you went through a breakup, if you went through some stuff, then I could be like,
yeah, your performance dropped, your mind's not in the game, and like things are bothering you easier.
Like you were a dick, but it's understandable why.
Do you guys think that he's gonna come back and Jenkins is out?
No.
Is gonna be okay.
Did you guys see he tweeted and then deleted? But it was like it was like he was kind of mending some fences.
Yeah.
Then he took it down. I'm not sure why. But it was like a very like it was kind of like a nice tweet. He was like, hey, like a lot of this is actually my fault. I should have handled it better. They still messed up on some stuff, but that kind of tweet.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's nice. And then it got deleted, which I was kind of surprised about. But that made me think maybe they could mend some fences here.
Yeah, I think sometimes with that, when people delete those, is like anytime you say more, you just get more replies, and so I'm who knows why you delete? Like you tweet that, and then people come into your DMs and are replying to that, like, well, why'd you tweet the first thing then, idiot? And you're like, I just don't want to deal with this. You delete it. Like I think sometimes that's the reason people delete it more than like any drama reason. They just don't want their DMs or their mentions flooded.
Yeah, I was looking at it as a positive because it was like, oh, like maybe there's some fences being mended here. I'm not sure.
As soon as I saw the celebration after Jenkins' Akali game and everybody's lifting him up and they're doing the poses and stuff, I'm like, looks like I feel like this one is.
I was gonna make that SpongeBob meme, where Squidward's locked up inside watching, and I wanted to put the all the Team Liquid players running around with Jenkins overhead. I saw that celebration too, and I was like, read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah.
Other Team Liquid news, though, because honestly, it's just being a dead horse here with the top laner situation. This info's been circulating for quite a while. More positive note, Corejj, #1 in NA. We already knew it. He was #1 in our hearts. Yep. But he has reached the highest LP ever achieved on the server.
It's crazy.
Honestly, isn't that crazy, though? That is Corejj.
Well, no, not when you put it like that, but I still think it's really impressive. Like just highest ever to me is just like, wow, that's cool, right? So I'm thinking about it through that kind of point of view. And also, I think people have changed their minds on this a bit more. Like, and Corejj is just so good that it doesn't really matter. But people always used to complain that support was so hard to climb as support, right? And I feel like there have been a lot of supports over the years now who've come forward and kind of bucked that trend. I mean, Stunt is always a guy that I always look to as a beastly solo queue support. He would always have multiple counts in the top 10. But like Corejj is just so insane. You look at some of his win rates on the champions. Like I haven't looked in a while, but I remember looking earlier at the start of this season, and he had like an over 90% win rate on Thresh with like a lot of games. And it's like, oh, you just don't lose.
And now most people are, well, not most people, but there's a sizable chunk that will argue support best role in the game. Yeah. So like the game has also changed significantly since then. And the impact of the role really is.
Yeah, no more ward bots spend all your gold just buying green and pinks and then every mid laner one shots you. But the topic of like highest LP reached ever, like brought back memories for a bunch of us on the AD when we were talking about it, like behind the scenes about like, oh, remember Pharrell and Lord and the 3K Elo Shockwave? And we were talking about like all the Elo games that people used to get, which when it felt like it was a more like a bigger conversation about raw Elo versus like the kind of more hidden MMR and LP look that you have these days. So it did bring some of that back about like, oh, look at how high that like raw big number is.
I mean, and honestly, this is something that I think is necessary for North America. I mean, we always talk about all these things that Corejj does for it. For the entire region as far as motivation, trying to educate players, creating content and videos, creating in-houses. Like this man puts in so much work to make the region better. And now leading by example, leading the charge of like, take solo queue seriously. We're getting to the top. And you were talking earlier too about like pointing out there's a lot of Team Liquid members that seem to be following suit.
6th.
so it seems like this even team-wide push of like, lead by example. We're going to push to the top, make solo queue. I'm not going to say the rest of it. No.
Make solo queue great.
But honestly, I think that's something.
That's what he's going to run on.
Hey, I'll back that platform.
I'll vote for you, Kobe.
Honestly, it is something I do feel strongly about.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really want to applaud, Corejj and Team Liquid in this, is that we need to have bring the prestige back to these positions so that it, by association, it's going to fuel more competition and increase competitiveness of just, how everyone in the region plays our game. Coming
from a WoW background, I always wished that there was top of the table titles in League, right?
That you get to like keep,
yeah,
I'm freaking Gladiator, I'm rank 1,
Exactly. And I mean, Gladiator was only, you got that for the one season. If you were the number one team, and now it's percentage is like 0.01%, your top 0.01% teams, then you get like that season's title. So you get like Relentless or Merciless or like Deadly Gladiator, and that's permanent. And like those permanent rewards, I think are so cool and always really kind of drove competition at the top of the table. And it's like, as a League of Legends player, I will never be competing for that, but I still want it because I want to tune in when it's like the last days of the season and see every top player queuing up, battling for rank 1. To me, that's so hype.
I feel like, especially with game like League of Legends and WoW, with the longevity that they've had and the probable continued longevity for even both of them, like when you have the season 2 number 1 ranked player, that's such like an OG, like, look at me.
The first thing I was going to say is like, it would allow old people like me to be able to hold on
when
to
you're
like
in plat, you
because like because it was actually pre-season 1 before, but I hit rank 4, and I was like, I would be able to hold on to that forever when people are like, look at this idiot in diamond, and I'm like,
the thing is, in League, they would meme you for that.
Excuse you, 10 years ago, I was rank 4.
Yeah, but in
watch yourself.
In League, they would just meme me, like, go back to bed, Grandpa, get out of my game. It's not dinosaur age anymore.
Just a side note. Holy crap, like a decade ago is how I'm now like referencing things.
2 more years. It's coming up on 10 years of LCS. 2023.
I checked his stats. So the Thresh has gone down to an embarrassing 57% win rate. But his Rel is his most played. 130 some games, 68% win rate. It's like it's really, really impressive stuff. I love the solo queue competition. I think anything that brings a highlight to it is cool, and I hope that this does drive more competition. I hope that our pros get more in it, and maybe we can find cool ways to highlight it even on LCS and the dive and stuff, like if people can kind of get it going, because I love to watch that.
I mean, if you remember, I think it was like season 3 or season 4 or maybe even season 5, Riot had like you would get a challenger jacket if you did that. That was cool, but I felt like it was almost like they put too much pressure on themselves to make jackets and ship them around to people. I like having a lower bar, like you're saying, just like a little title you can put in somewhere.
But and honestly, I know like the push to have like something physical was like, oh, we're making it cooler. We're just video game players. I feel like having a virtual thing.
Excuse me, I never leave my house.
Yeah, that's not cooler. I mean, there are streamers that have, because we had backpack. Well, there are many things that we did. Like we had the jackets, the backpacks, like all the stuff. There are still some streamers that will have the backpack like up position behind their stream or whatever or something like that. But it's a way to put a physical thing to represent virtually for for your achievements. So just literally getting back to
well, how are you going to prove it to other people? Like check my Twitter profile. I swear to God, I was the number 4.
Mark stole that jacket and like got some sewing work done to like look, it says Mark Challenger now, I swear.
It looks more like a Moby.
Needlework was not what it was.
Needlework wasn't great. All right, Honda MVP. Who is the best performing sub so far in summer? So are we counting people who were announced coming into summer? We have to make that distinction.
I would include King.
Okay.
Because he started the whole season, but he was
Let's do any summer change
from spring to summer.
And I will submit Jenkins.
No, because I'm taking Jenkins.
know what?
Spartacus.
I'm gonna let you, even though you lost the bet. So I should have dominance over.
Wait, you have Jenkins.
King Kobe. he wants president. It's not enough for him. Now he's got to be king as well.
I don't feel like you need that high of a rank to.
The power's going to his head.
Mark down.
Are you trying to raise yourself or put me in the? I'm your serf, I'm a peasant.
I'm more of a like build people up, type of thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, I feel like there are other good options. So it's fine if you wanted to take it, but I just also felt like the Gangplank, even though, and specifically I know this because I first picked Alphari for my fantasy team and did not get the Alphari points that I was looking for because he's number one in all these stats, kills and CS and everything that gives you fantasy points. But Jenkins was still so important, and the Gangplank had such a big effect so many times in managing the side wave, minion waves, answering different rotations around the map, and then in these team fights, the barrel chains as well as the ultimate. Plus, the Kali game, you don't even have to mention that one was obvious. You can see it with your eyes on screen when he's getting quadra kill, killing everybody in the back line. I really do feel like he's had this big effect for the team, though it is in a different way than Alphari did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he has made mistakes, right? Like, I think I brought this up in the cast, and then you actually talked about it. I was going to ask if you saw
the segment. Yeah,
I did see the segment. But the more I think about it, the more comfortable I am with saying, I feel like he's actually, at the very least, the best team fighting GP in the league right now, right? Like, I think that he has so consistently hit triple barrels.
Nobody else is playing GP right now.
Well, whatever. Like, I feel like he's performing really damn well in the GP, and even just comparing people who were playing GP last season, like in spring, so like kind of looking at the year, I feel like he has been so good in the team fights. Every time he plays it, it's like every single team fight, he's hitting a good triple barrel, and people just don't do that a lot of the time. Like they're not able to get consistently the chains into the back line. He's hiding his barrels in good spots. Like I just think his team fighting in particular has been so damn good.
Since we do have this theme of like submitting the exceptions of like, for the laning phase, the solo kill, I will also submit for the team fighting, the flank around the back of the dragon pit where
he's made mistakes.
But see, like those kinds of things and the solo kill even, which is what I was talking about in that segment, was like mechanically, he's actually really good. It's just like you could point to decision making in these like the flank and like where he was standing, not knowing that he's getting flanked or that he's in a risky
having
position.
a ward behind you.
Yeah, like those are the things he's struggling with more than like, that GP combo was not
Anyways,
great. That's
my submission for best summer change, I guess, for player.
I was just going to finish up by saying I think mechanically he actually looks a lot better than a lot of the other ones, which is why I was going to pick him, because when I watch King, I think, and even Danny, like they look good. They're not bad. I don't want to make it sound like that, but I wasn't like, oh, wow, look at that, other than some specific team fights. And a lot of them were on Kai'Sa, where I feel like Kai'Sa gets kind of a lot of free highlight montages of like the ult in, kill
whenever
one person.
It's 10%.
Yeah, and then you also then you use your Gale.
It does look cool. Zooming in there super fast.
You look cool as hell on Kai'Sa, but it's also 2 buttons.
And you go in Viz as well, right? So it's like you go in, someone's 10%, you execute someone with a Q, you Gale Force auto, someone else dies, you go invisible. It's like, I get it.
It makes its own montage in a lot of ways. I do think that those would probably be the next closest to. I think like some of the other ones, like Yasui, hasn't quite had the same.
I actually just thought of a better answer.
Okay.
Because of the rework of the rules, but
go for it.
If you do you want to take
Avidage
as soon as I mentioned rework of the rules of like summer change, I was like, oh no, we've made a grave error.
Still Jenkins over. No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you win.
You
Congratulations, King Emperor Kobe over there.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm in agreement. I think Jenkins has been really good. Avidage within those rules, obviously, is incredible. But I do think, especially when you're looking at mistakes, like I think Danny and King have been good, but they have also felt even more mistake prone than when you're looking over at Jenkins, who has had a couple notable ones. But as you said, it wasn't so much mechanical. Like when he got solo killed, he was running to Jensen's
He was going to
TP,
escape if he just flashed to the turret.
Yeah. And you can see it's like, oh, my teammate's TPing in. I got to like follow the call, it almost felt like.
Yeah.
And
but those types of decisions are things that you have to critique in this game
Totally.
because the game is is all around those types of decisions.
You definitely should. I agree 100%. I just mean, I think that like when I'm looking at Danny, like I think his Jinx game was good, but when I've seen some kind of like questionable Ezreal moments where they're like shifting in and dying and things like that. So it's like that's just as bad, if not worse, right? A lot of times when you are the Ezreal, like that decision really decides games. Like we've seen a number of Ezreals shift in aggressively and get super hard punished.
Even like Danny trying to kill people in front of the Nexus instead of just hitting Nexus turrets is like, well, you could just end the game or you could lose it.
But it's been promising. I'm actually really happy.
Yeah, I like all of them.
Seeing a lot of these guys come in. And there's been a lot of new faces in the LCS, like this year, last year, you know, when you think about like FBI and Tactical coming up and having like all these new round of players, makes me really excited for the future. A lot of these guys. All right. Patch 11.12 is out. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I have been playing a little bit of the new Mundo.
Red Bull ASMR.
I don't know if you've tried it at all, Kobe, because I feel like new Mundo looks garbage in jungle.
Here's how I've tried it. I've played against it in several games and killed them a bunch.
Yeah. So
not impressed.
I was looking at the data for jungle. It seems like it's just a travesty in jungle now. It feels like they're trying to hard force more to solo lane, because like the W just seems a lot worse for the clear. It kind of is like, I like his animations. I like his skins. He looks cool. Like objectively, it's like a more interesting champion. But I will say, doesn't feel that strong. And I don't know if there's just like things I need to kind of like learn about it. Like the passive is cool. Like you eat the first CC, you can pick up the little vial for some more health. You kind of get the mini gray health on your W and stuff. But like the biggest thing I was noticing is that even in games where I was feeling pretty strong, like I was feeling pretty ahead, like your brawling power just feels way weaker than it was before. And I don't know if that's just because like the E is not as strong, like there's not as many stats in the E. It seems like a lot of it is like you get more ADs, you get low health instead of just like a fat bonus of AD on your E, where like there was matchups where it's like, oh, you get ahead. Now you actually just start walking at this guy and beating his ass with your E up, and you have a big AD steroid and you kind of kill them. And now it's like more kind of just like trying to be clever. You know, the E doesn't really feel that good unless you're actually getting it on an execute on a minion. And then it's kind of just about poking them through. So it's like, if they're out of the minions, you poke them with your Q. If they're in the minions, you try to poke them with your E. But then like, I never really felt like I was going to win the all-in anyway. So I'm like...
See, and this is one where I actually hope that they don't hotfix buffs into the champion.
Yeah.
Because despite being a doctor, Dr. Mundo was never a super complicated champion that required being tricky or being
You're saying
crafty, to your point.
The old Mundos are struggling with the kit that requires more than...
I mean, yeah, you can be fooled because of the profession and the nice suit. But they did kind of put in a lot of, more tricky like angles basically in the kit. And it's both weaker just in these straight up brawls, but as well, gonna require more time for people to get used to using and used to playing, especially if you're like, oh, I'm locking in Mundo. I'm the go where I please, just, run around type of thing. I'm not the biggest fan of like, oh, they added in like another Zach Blob mini game thing with the passive and the way that works to still try and incorporate the fantasy of like, ooh, you can't CC me, I go where I please type of thing. I'm like, it doesn't quite land for me. But I was never a big Mundo player before anyway, so I honestly, I'm never gonna pick him. I'll just keep on killing him. Instead, you know what I've got for you though? If you're looking for a good jungle champ off of this patch, RAMMUS. The clear is still slow, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because his gank power is so good, and I've made the switch to the Church of Ghost. Now, Flash is old, true, reliable, always great on everybody, but the cooldown of Ghost and the way that it works with RAMMUS Q, as well as the way that it works with the ultimate now, giving it even longer range, you can spam gank with this champion. You don't have to power farm. I focus on mainly the AoE camps because they all just kill themselves on your defensive curl. So red quadrant is insanely important for RAMMUS, and you get off a whole bunch of ganks. And he still becomes this incredible front line for you for later, which is incredibly important for solo queue, because so many solo queue games devolve into, oh no, dragon fight's coming up. The only way for our solo queue team to coordinate is to all group together. So we need to have a tank to team fight. And it really does feel like for the majority of ranks, this is going to be a really solid pick for you, even if you're not a jungler usually, like if you're autofilled or something.
Especially with all the AD mids and like melee champs that are out there, like he screws over a lot of these champs that are super popular right now with taunt.
That's my recommendation for people.
What's
right
your recommended
now.
build then?
I still go chem tank. One thing that I did is I always like look at the highest rated like one tricks around the world, and there's this guy from Brazil that plays on Europe West. So I mainly will look at KR or Europe West servers, because those are, the most competitive that are easily researchable. LPL servers are super hard to get data on. But he plays from Brazil. He got challenger with over 55% win rate. It's between like almost 60% win rate, playing with like 200 ping from Brazil, playing RAMMUS. And one of the small things that he does is in getting to your item builds, he doesn't just complete turbo chem tank first every single game. A lot of the times he'll just buy Bramble Vest really early on, even before Cinderhulk sometimes, because it is so necessary for this champion, with taunt and this synergy with your defensive ball curl. So that's something I've started to incorporate, is like the smaller items instead of fully completing your mythic. Boots, because of the speed, Bramble Vest, and Balmy Cinder. Depending on the gold, whenever you return to base. But yeah, definitely highly recommend if you're looking to climb with a tank, or at least junglers should have all options in their pool: one AD threat, one tank, and one AP.
One thing I'm not looking forward to potentially coming out of this patch is Ziggs. I think Ziggs is a blight upon competitive play.
You like your towers where they are, Mark? Do you
remember the glory days of Season 5 Ziggs being meta and every game lasting 50 minutes because of stall out? I do think that there are more game-ending tools nowadays than there were back then.
Diving's also easier, I think.
Diving's easy. I think teams are more coordinated with punishing this kind of stuff. But at the very least, like, when Ziggs bot was like, ooh, look at this flash in the pan thing, that's pretty cool. But, like, I don't want to see Ziggs come all the way back. The buffs are pretty significant, I'd say, with 20 base damage on the final rank of Q, which you're maxing first anyways, leading to a lot better poke. And then the Mega Inferno Bomb's missile speed went way up. And, like, that doesn't matter as much for minion waves, because that's a lot of the ways in competitive you use Ziggs ult is like, ooh, gotta go push top while Dragon's coming up. Just throw my ult up there or something, like you get some of these situations. But for actually finishing people off and sniping people at the end of plays, this is a huge buff. Being able to increase the missile speed from 1500 basically to 2250, that's not negligible.
Especially when, like, one of the things you'll see, like sometimes there's a Ziggs one trick I used to play with sometimes, and a lot of what he would do is like these halfway roams to bot where he would throw ults to assist in 2v2 fights. Like, no, I mean, it's like if you've an engaged support, right, your Leona goes in and this guy's halfway down the river and just ults onto them, and it's like, even if you don't get the kill, they're like out of lane, right? Yeah. So like for those kind of plays, those long range plays, the move speed on the ult matters a lot. And when I hear 20 damage on Q, I think about minion killing breakpoints.
Yeah.
Where it's like all of a sudden you one shot the back line a lot faster and things like that, which just does make the kind of stall out type situations a lot easier to achieve.
Well, even like objective situations where you're just like lobbing Qs over and over and over again.
Yep.
Now you need to land less. I mean, this is a super spammable ability. So it's not like, you got on like a 20-second cooldown, you got 20 extra damage. This is like very low cooldown ability that you're going to use nonstop. So it's a pretty huge buff.
Only other two little small things for me. I foresee Jarvan at least making his way back into the LPL, and then maybe other leagues. LPL always loves him the most. Hope that he actually comes back to other leagues, because he's such a versatile champion and allows for cool combos. And I declare Udyr should be dead after this. This is a large damage nerf to his Phoenix Cone. I think that he should be dead. I already thought people were holding onto it like so hard. I never felt like he should be permabanned. I feel like you can trade for it in draft. He's very powerful, because the strengths for pro player are so good with early game and being a front line. But I think that 11-12 we should definitely see the shift away.
I want to see Poppy, and I won't stay on it too long, but I think that Poppy hasn't changed really in 11-2, but just the way that the meta is now, there's so many 4 melee versus 4 melee comps and so many dashes. I think Poppy gets insane value. It's actually high win rate in solo queue in 3 roles. It can be played mid, top, and jungle. Mid might sound troll to you, but when you're playing into these dashing melee champions, you have a lot of winning matchups. So I think Poppy should be explored. All right, LCS, let's talk about it. Is 100 Thieves the best team in the league?
Yes. I think so.
You need the whole point of this show is reasoning.
It was a yes or no answer. There was no box underneath.
All right, next question. You solved it. Okay.
Yeah, we'll go on to Cloud9. I think, mentioning Cloud9, they're probably the only team right now that feels like they're in contention after the TSM bit of a collapse and some of the stuff with TL going on. So, and they did beat them earlier. That was during C9's sort of first week back MSI hangover situation. But even regardless of that, it feels like their games are easily the cleanest in the league while they're winning. Even this weekend where C9 goes 3-0, they're struggling in a number of these games that look like they could have lost to CLG, for example. So how dominant 100 Thieves are in their wins, as well as the breadth of styles that they've done to do it, spamming the Karma week 1, week 2, everyone's like, okay, let's ban the Karma, and then it's like, oh my god, he's popping off on the Akali, you ban that, and then it's like, oh my god, he's crushing Jizuke in lane with the Orianna in, against the Jace, and like all that combo together with the fact that Someday looks a lot better. He's playing his carries super well, closers all over the map, their bot lane's still dominant. Like, it's like, well, where's the weakness on this team right now on an individual level or a meta level or draft level? Like, I actually don't know who can slow them down at all right now.
See, one of the things I want to point out was in a lot of the interviews from the 100 Thieves players is them talking about Reaper and kind of the structure that he brings and how he's a bit more controlling and a bit more directional. So gives a bit more guidelines, I feel like, and it's definitely something that they needed. Yes, Abadaga is amazing.
Yeah.
I think for so long, 100 Thieves fans have been trying to figure out what to do with the mid lane, and kind of jumping through hoops in that area. It seems like he's answered all of their prayers. So it does feel like a no-brainer to say 100 Thieves right now, best performing team in the league. But it gets very interesting if you think they're going to, if you project a little bit further, because summer is so long.
Yeah.
And all of the other top teams, and especially in their post-game interviews, reference this and reference, the lengths that you go to figure out what works for your team. What's important is, building for you, and you want to peak at the right time towards the end, and there's so much time, and you want to learn everything there is about you and the rest of the team.
How
and so you're like,
mid for PoE.
Yeah, exactly.
Still losing.
So,
let's check again.
We got check again. Okay, now it's time for LeBlanc. Okay, that one still works. Honestly, though, I think that's where it gets really fun, because it's got to be. It's close to like no contest as far as best performing team right now.
Yeah.
100 Thieves, they definitely look so much better.
I think it is no contest. I think they're the best team right now, easy peasy. And as you say, the question becomes, are they the best team at the end? That's harder to answer. I am feeling like I'm being pushed more towards that direction, because I was thinking Zen was going to come back, then I heard he's not. I was thinking Alphari is going to come back, then I heard he's not. And as much as I'm like, great job, Jenkins, and like, wow, like, wow, King, you're doing pretty well. It's like, it's just not the same, right? Like, Alphari was like, oh, you're the most dominant laner in the league ever.
Yeah, you're the best.
Like, not even just the best now, like probably the best laning performance a top laner has ever had in this league ever, right? It's like, wow, that's pretty big. And Sven
Excuse me, Dyrus, thank you very much.
I don't think he's ever this lane dominant.
Even then, like, Balls and him were like 1-2, and you could like debate it back
then. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just tough, right? It's tough for me to buy in on those teams as much. I don't think that 100 Thieves is going to be infallible by any means, and we got a long season to get through, but right now, they're looking nice.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned with the Reaper edition too, and all the other improvements were like in the lead into the season dive, I was saying like, well, they had other problems that they still need to solve. I don't think Abadaga is going to be the silver bullet that's going to fix some of their top lane issues and some of the other things that they were struggling with.
Closer's looking great.
Yeah, but now it's like, well, when you factor in Reaper as well, like with all this, like the team is gelling. And I think, come playoffs, maybe C9 if Perks is in form and Fudge is still playing at this level, like I think that's probably their closest competition right now.
I will say, sometimes it can be a bit of a double-edged sword as far as Reaper and his strength and his guidance, and he's a little bit stubborn sometimes on picks. Like conforming. It feels like he doesn't want to conform a lot of the time. And so if there is something that is like universally agreed upon, super strong or whatever, sometimes he'll like really push the players to branch out and find a counter that way. And that's not always successful. So that is something that can maybe bite you in best of fives or towards the end or whatever. But yeah, I'm all aboard the 100 Thieves hype train for now.
Especially since they have 27 games in summer to figure these things out, right? They got a lot of time, and I'm really excited to see it.
I will say, since we were broaching the topic of who's going to be the best at the end, though, with Cloud9, most of the worry was in the first couple games.
Yep.
Coming back from MSI and being upset, losing to Golden Guardians is a huge upset. And then the Renekton game, hugely memeable and huge upsets. But they also do feel like they have solidified much more. And to your point on, King and incorporating him, yeah, he's not Sven. It's never going to be Sven again. But even if they don't put Sven back in, which they were pretty public about, Max Waldo in the interview he didn't say for sure not going to happen, but said there were very low chance that he comes back in. Do you see this team? Like, is this team back? I feel like the team never really left.
What about the CLG game?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, what do you think their level is? Like, they won
compared
to MSS finals when they beat Team Liquid, who still had a sub. Like, how do we feel about them right now? Like, are they, like you said, are they back? Because I would still say no. Like, that CLG game is one where I'm like, woo, that's not winning you a championship if you're playing quite at that level. And the perfect game versus FlyQuest was like, sick, that's awesome. But right now it feels like teams' performances can fluctuate so much game to game. That feels like you hit like the FlyQuest low and the C9 high at the same time. And then, the next game, it's like, well, you probably should have just lost to CLG. But, things happen.
Yeah, I mean, that CLG game is not one that you come back from most of the time. Like, they were so far behind, right? And CLG got caught off guard and made a number of mistakes. They got caught off guard by TB Flank. No one on their team saw it. They got, a number of individual errors that they got really punished for. I think C9, is going to scale up. I think that they're going to be, good and probably able to challenge 100 Thieves for that championship, if not maybe even be favored by the end. Because even if you aren't sold on King, you don't have to be thinking every single player on a team is better than the other team for them to win, right? Yeah. And it's like Blabber at his best, guess what? He's a lot better than Closer. Fudge at his best has actually been playing better than Someday. Like, Perks is for
historically against Abadaga in Europe.
Pardon?
I said historically against Abadaga in Europe was better. Yeah.
I mean, he's historically better than literally every Western mid laner ever, right? Like, every player. And Vulcan, I think, is an easy argument for best support in the league, up there with Corejj, right? So when you're looking piece by piece, I for sure think Cloud9, can get there. They're still a little bit behind the curve, of course, as far as taking a break off and whatnot. But I think we have to kind of see how they develop over time. And the other thing is, I mean, this is true, I think, with Cloud9 some last season, and also with Perks when he's on G2, is that it's like, sometimes they just kind of have trolly games, right? And it doesn't necessarily dictate how they'll do at the end. Like, obviously the Renekton game was horrible, but then he comes back and he's just popping off in a lot of games this weekend. So I'm not super concerned on how Cloud9 is doing. Like, if you put a gun in my head, I would still say Cloud9 are going to win this split. I still have that faith. I do think that for sure 100 Thieves look the best right now, but I think Cloud9 is still an incredibly strong team, and people shouldn't be shaking in their boots about it.
Yeah, I would feel more confident in supporting that if the Sven change hadn't occurred, because then you're just counting all the positives and you're like, Fudge improved so much and you can ride his peak, and the arc really continues. But they made it interesting for us, so now we get all the actual debate, and I'm super curious to see too, because they're one of the teams that most frequently references the 27 summer games and the length of the split. So to the point of trying to use the small week by week data to make generalizations is dangerous.
I mean, speaking of teams that like to use long splits to experiment, TSM, historically, I would say, whether it's Parth or Bjergsen, I don't know who's leading this charge, but TSM, I feel like, is always changing their drafts up quite a bit. And this time, it's another question of, is TSM experimenting or are they just inconsistent?
So you stay historically always doing that. I don't actually think that's true. Like, I'm going to pull up really quick the spring stuff, because I feel like PoE in particular is experimenting way more in summer than he ever did really in spring.
That's a short-term history. I'm thinking like, when you go back to
Bjergsen.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. Parth and Bjergsen teams generally have experimented a lot. And they're working together now on more of the back end.
I buy that.
Yeah, so like the Galio J4, when they started playing that, people were like, why is Bjergsen playing the supportive mid?
Yep. And Lulu and Karma.
Yeah, and the zillion mids, and they're always trying different things out. He's played Cho'Gath mid when Bjergsen was there, and like I feel like this is a team that has historically used regular season to branch out and try things.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I think they're doing here. The Viego games, the LeBlanc games, the Lucian games, like PoE's control mages are not going anywhere. He's always going to be able to play them.
So here, I'm with you, because I was originally looking at it as like this team, as in that like this roster.
This year, yeah.
And I would have kind of contested there. So I agree. Like historically, TSM has done this. What I will say is that PoE and a lot of the control mage players think that control mage itemization sucks. And like even Perks was talking about this with MSI. It's like, people are saying, Victor's such a terrible champion. Why'd you pick Victor? He's like, yeah, I know Victor sucks, but guess what? We needed some AP, right? And sometimes you just have to play it to make the comp work. And if the read from TSM with Bjergsen and PoE both there is that, guess what? Mage itemization is trash. Maybe you don't get to go back to it, right? Like, is that their call? Like, I think that's interesting, because there's been so little as far as the control mages, and like even just comparing PoE from summer to spring, his top 4 most played were control mages, right? It was 12 Azir, 9 Syndra, 6 Orianna, 4 Victor. Then he had a couple Lucian games and stuff in there, right? But that was the only kind of spice, and there was 0 melee champions played by him in all of spring, right? And then you look towards summer, it's Lucian, Viego, he's got the LeBlanc in there. He does have the one Victor game, the one Orianna game, so it's interesting. It feels like more of a departure, and the most I can remember feeling like, oh, PoE is really trying to force like away from this style and adapt to the meta.
I would submit, because I wanted to jump in and support Mark on that point of PoE, he always is consistently doing tons of experimentation
with items.
And it's just does he and does his team feel like they've arrived on the consensus of what is the best? And right now, every team is a little bit different on where they feel the meta is settling and what is the strongest. And so we're seeing this kind of these discrepancies in this experimentation from all the teams that are trying to settle on on what works for best for them, and incorporating all these different new solo laners and all these different options. For me, PoE is one of the most consistent players in always updating and checking, yes, item builds, even if it is the same champion, trying all the different options. And those ones even make their way into the LCS.
And sometimes you're like, are you sure?
Yeah, sometimes they only show up one time in an LCS game, and he decides to change his mind. But he is definitely one to push the boundaries. So I do feel like TSM, with both Bjergsen and him, are not ever going to be at a loss for options in mid lane, or at least thoughts about where to go with it.
Yeah.
And if they do repeat champions, that to me that just means they did a lot of experimentation and they decided that this is their most successful strat.
So take a guess for PoE. What is his most played melee champion, like career long?
Kiana?
Nope. So like if you want to count Kassadin, that's 9 games, and that's the most in his career. And then if you want to go down below that, it is actually Talon at 3 games, right? And this is career wide. So it's like, though he does experiment, it's usually like within his kind of like realm of like messing with items and like, this is my style. This guy has never gone towards the melee stuff. And so that's why I was interested to see Viego. And maybe the Viego is going to be a one-off. And he's like, okay, we're more comfortable on range stuff. So we're going to stick more with like the Lucian. Maybe they can adapt more to that. But even Lucian, he's got 7 games career. And he has a 28% win rate on it. So like it hasn't gone that well. And it's basically all in spring and summer. Like he never really played it before.
Yeah.
And the only champion that has more games on that as a physical damage champion is Varus, and that's 10 games when Poke Varus was insanely OP.
Yeah.
So it's like he doesn't play AD. Like even when Ezreal mid was meta and some of that was AP, he only has 4 games. Like he just plays magic damage. He doesn't play melee.
I think it's a really interesting discussion to have because on the one hand, there's always 2 sides to it, like just do what you're good at, refine that play style.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say it's bad.
Yeah, for sure. Like, okay, he hasn't played Karma yet. Like that's a closer thing to him that works in the meta, evidenced by 100 Thieves, that, TSM could pick up and learn. And it probably works with Spica. Spica's pretty good. Spica's actually been incredible this split, I'd argue, like give him Xin Zhao, give Spica some more agency, play around him. Like you can find these things, but at the same time, you also don't want to be pigeonholed when everything that right now feels busted is Akali and Viego and Gwen and like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I do want to give credit to him for the experimentation side, because even if he doesn't play a bunch of them and think that it is the best for him in these games, he does try them. Right? Because he does have the 1 and 2 and like 3 games played on these things. And he's like, okay, it's not for me.
But that's the problem, right? And if you are being critical about it, if none of them are ever for you, and that is what's OP right now, that's a bit concerning, right?
Well, and to that point about when you play them matters. Like, yeah, you tried them twice in regular season, but then come playoffs, you're not doing them, or you're not winning on them, because that's what happened in playoffs last split. Was they did have some TF games, I think, and Lucian games, but I don't remember them.
So Kiana is also tied with Talon at 3, and
way up there.
just want to say, and he won 2 of the 3 games, so.
What,
positive
win rate above 50%, maybe?
Were they in playoffs? I don't know.
This man has been playing since season 4, by the way.
Yeah.
And to compare, 93 Orianna games.
I think the point that we're all arriving at is
Keanu was a correct answer.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You just want your credit.
Nobody doesn't even care about the meta. He's just like, I was right.
Yeah, who cares about what we're talking about PoE?
But and I'm not trying to be a hater, right? Yeah. Like I think it's fine to play your style. I just wonder how much they're going to experiment before they're like, okay, if there's 27 games, we're 6 games in. If you're 15 games in and you're like not doing so hot, is it time to go Orianna, Azir, Syndra, just like control mages, Victor, etc. every game and just give up on it? Or like, should TSM be kind of shooting for the moon here and saying like, no, if this is the meta, let's keep forcing it, even if it's not working, because that's what we need to do to win. It's like, how important are these champions right now? That's the question that I'm most interested in.
I think you can also factor, this whole thing's been centered around PoE, but the rest of the team style does matter. Like,
totally.
Sword Art is a scrappy guy, generally. Like, look at how LPL, how he was in there. He's roaming all over the map, making plays happen. Huni is obviously a very aggressive player. And so, like, there are other components on this team that, if TSM is going to go down this more skirmish-heavy, melee-oriented early-game approach, there's other players on the team who are probably, like, chomping at the bit to get in there.
And it's just the question then becomes, do you need PoE to do this too to make those work? Because everyone is running 4 melee comps right now, right? Like that is so popular around the world, is that you have your marksman and then you have 4 melee who dive. And like that is what pretty much everyone drafts. And if you want your mid laner to be involved in that, like, do you need the extra dive buddy? Maybe you don't. I just think it's an interesting conversation.
I brought this up last year as well when we were in a dive heavy set of games, but the likes of Swain and Gala, these counter dive, large AoE champions that excel versus heavy melee compositions.
Poppy mid.
Yeah.
Poppy mid, let's go.
Whenever you have the general game theory, whenever you have this agreed upon, super strong set of champions and strategy, it's the people who are on the forefront, avant-garde, looking at, okay, well, if that's what everyone's going to go towards and they're all practicing this, how do we branch out and counter this? And look to be the next step and actually look to be on the cutting edge. And I think that is something that is very rewarding, but also very risky because if you do spend a lot of your time in your testing to try and find that out, and you find that it is not effective, then guess what? Everybody else has all this time on what is powerful and guaranteed,
you're worse at it.
And you're just like sitting here with nothing.
Yep, for sure. And we spent a lot of time on this, but I do think it's really interesting because it is kind of like more than just about TSM and PoE. It's kind of more about like, do you have to play this style? As it is becoming pretty positive. All right. Team Liquid, are they no longer a title contender?
I mean, I think the language is very forgivable right there. Contender, to me, it is definitely still within.
Are they
contender.
In your top 3? If you have to predict,
they're not in
who's going to Worlds right now. It's a TL go to Worlds.
I might drop them out of top 3, but that's the thing. I'm not so sure of it that I want to pull them out of contender, because it has been since the beginning of summer. We turned it into a top 4 conversation.
Right, well, and it's now top 3, Kobe. It's World.
He changed the goalpost on you.
The game has changed.
That's what I'm saying.
Put down one of those
contender.
Fingers. Go like one down. There
contender is different than you are going to Worlds.
Yeah. Well, I'm defining this as then. Is Team Liquid a Worlds team?
I mean,
because
also,
that is crazy if they're not.
Yeah, I think like if you're saying they're no longer a contender, that's 0% chance they can win. But like I would still say someone with like a 3% chance is not really a contender. You know, and I think that's kind of where we're coming at with this conversation. Is like,
I would question that you would give 3% down to 3%.
Well, my point is that there's a gray area that we're obviously debating right now.
Which is why I wanted to change the language, because I realized that the headline was bad.
Yeah. Who are your 3 world reps?
Too generic.
Declare your 3 world reps right now. 100 Thieves, Cloud9, and then is it TSM or Team Liquid?
I feel
honestly
like it's between those two. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say despite the bad weekend, I mean, I sound like such a TSM fanboy because my bet and now this, but like right now, I'm a little bit more confident.
He's holding on.
I just feel a little bit more confident in TSM. I know they just had this bad weekend, but again, it's like I'm watching them play things that we've have data before. Like this is not their style, really. They're experimenting, so it felt a little better. And one of the losses was to 100 Thieves, who, you know, I'm not like, oh, you lost. Okay.
Here's the other thing why I think declaring your world's reps right now is disingenuous, because of the state of the game right now. I don't expect that to hold true. And I would say that this is abnormally poor of a state of the game for Team Liquid, because Jensen, you just even compare Power of Evil and Jensen Viego. And tell me which one of these you would rather have on your team.
Neither.
Let's not talk about Jensen. Let's not talk about Jensen's Viego.
As much as it is, you know, we're always talking about adaptation. I do feel like Team Liquid often has some reliable fallback, but it definitely doesn't seem good right now for them. And you mentioned some of the Ezreals, you know, like Eing in and stuff. Tactical has also been one of those that has kind of exposed himself in some of the scenarios. So it's definitely a difficult one. I would probably, especially since they put a date on the Alphari thing, and it's like I was banking for a long time, you know, kind of holding out hope that
he's gonna be back.
He's gonna be back. It's gonna be smoothed out, and you know, the meta is going to adjust as well in favor for them, and it feels like it should be an upward from here kind of trend for Team Liquid.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that they've changed their identity so much from being like the superstar, super expensive lineup, it feels like, when, you know, you have Double Lift and like all these other people in there, to like, well, Tactical is like more NA talent. Now you also have Jenkins in there, which it seems like you're saying they're a little bit more committed to. I hope that they are still making a deep run in playoffs, but I'm with you where I'm a little bit more hesitant about it. Given that, like, while I have been impressed by Jenkins' mechanics, I'm more concerned about like when you're playing a 5-game series against another really good team and they're finding ways to exploit a player's weaknesses, because that has happened even in the C9 series to Alphari, where it's like, okay, Armeo's subbing in, we're just going to gank topside all the time, and like he's not always there when he needs to be and stuff like that. I feel like, I mean, this is projecting really far forward for week 2 in the regular season, but
and they have 21 more regular season games.
Yeah, they have 21 more regular season. Like they can easily fix these kinds of things, but these are the areas that I think that like would be the concern as a contender, because mechanically I watch them and I'm like, most like Tactical is really good mechanically.
Tactical is
and,
actually playing better than Spring, I think.
Yeah, he's way better. This is closer to his previous summer performance more than it is his spring one. So, you know, I'm feeling still pretty good about them, but whenever you bring in so many new people, And under these circumstances, you're like, hey.
And it's so hard to not, think about, how is the team mental being affected? You just lost like the most dominant top laner ever.
Team mental, I'm definitely going with TSM then.
Yeah.
To me, they are the clear winners right now. Every other team is like, there are fires popping up all over the place. And this is the first, when was the last time you can remember TSM making a meme video? Like they just made content randomly out of nowhere, and it's just this Spica-led video, right? That does not happen frequently.
I mean, I think just the fact that we're having this conversation that's even in debate shows how much like the goalposts have kind of shifted on like what's successful for TL now, right? And I think that alone is so concerning for their team when you think about like this is a team with like $5 million worth of salary for like this year, right? And you're like, ooh, are they gonna make Worlds or not? Like that's not what they wanted. That's not what they were looking for. They were looking for like a good international performance. They were looking to get out of groups, go to semis, do something huge when they're picking up Santorum, when they're picking up Alphari. This is not what was envisioned. And of course, it's kind of out of left field, the stuff with Alphari. I still think TL is a good team. I still think we've seen a lot of teams succeed with like the journeyman top laner, right? So if they can kind of like adapt Jenkins to that, I think that they could be, challenging for the title again. But like looking at it right now, if I had to pick my 3 teams today, I say the other 3 I'm more on board with. And that's scary for TL. Maybe Alphari comes back. Maybe he doesn't, but they get really comfortable with Jenkins because I do think that Tactical is playing well. I think that, Jensen hasn't been playing great, but I think, like he has so many good years under his belt that I have faith that by the end of the split, by the end of the split, he's going to be good. Santorum has been insanely consistent. Corejj, you still have to put, like, if he's not clear number 1, he's there with Vulcan, right? Like, they are still chock full of talent. It's just, like, it's so easy to fixate on, like, but where's my Alphari?
I think it was the 3rd game where he was playing Braum, but there was a hook that landed on it was against Immortals. There was a hook that landed on Tactical, and Corejj was like mid-air towards Tactical before like the hook even landed. He was like, my AD carry is getting caught. He like saw the future, hopped in front with the Braum shield, and Xerxes had to like try and throw his ult on Gragas behind the shield, and he ended up whiffing it. Corejj is still playing really well. Is what I was getting at.
That's always going to be your consistent one. I think right now too, if I had to declare, I would put TSM in there at the moment.
All right, I'm gonna demand a strong stance from you lads here. EG's current best player is Danny.
No.
Who is?
I'm saying Impact still.
Mark?
I mean, you want a strong statement, but here I go into like a little thing. It's a dual lane. It's like, I feel like it's less like unless you're getting 2v2 killed in that, it's a lot harder to stand out in positive or negative ways because it's like, okay, well, I'm playing defensive right now because my support's roaming and I'm just going to sit under turret. Whereas like a lot of the times solo laners get more exposed in situations. And like when I think back about Impact having bad games, I can think of quite a few in this split already. Like the one versus TSM last week and stuff like that. Like, there's more bad things I can think of for Impact, but I also feel like I can remember more game-winning plays out of him, like more good things as well. So like, I think Danny's been their most consistent player.
So it's 2 no's.
Yeah, well, and your statement is yes. Is that why you're directing this hard statement?
No. So Parth tweeted out that Jenkins and Danny are contesting for title of the best player on their team right now. And and that's not like the hottest take, but I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it.
I think it's not unreasonable.
Exactly. And I think it's cool that it makes you think a little bit. We didn't obviously go over the TL one because there's a lot to talk about with them, but the Danny take I think is interesting, and I think it's worth considering. Like, I would agree that I'm on the no side just because I do think that there have been kind of like the more impactful plays and bigger moments from some of the other players. I felt like they've kind of gotten them more of their wins.
Yeah.
But also when I look at the losses, I start to kind of agree with like the consistency thing. Like in a lot of the losses, I was like, Danny's actually been their best player in a lot of their losses. He has fought well in team fights. Like, he's positioning well. He's not really often making the mistake that kind of loses the game. I think this weekend there may have been a couple more mistakes, but I've been very surprised and kind of pleased at how good he is right out the gate. And talking to Artemis, I think I maybe mentioned this on broadcast. I can't remember. Maybe it was just you guys. I talked to Artemis about him prior to the season, and like he was selling me on him, right? And I'm starting to buy what he was selling because he was saying he's an upgrade now, and like, damn, is he going to be good later?
Yeah.
And that's cool. And I'm all aboard, baby. Like NA talent, let's go. Danny to the moon.
I will say that, and especially with Evil Geniuses, they will always sell you on the next new hottest up and coming theme because there's so
Pune shows up.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, you like that one? I got 6 more of them ready to go because that
so
is.
You're telling me I'm a sucker. I just bought a bridge in Brooklyn.
Honestly,
no, they start you with a good one, and then
they get your loyalty. You are now a loyal customer
so
because
I got the real Gucci bag, and the next one is Gucci.
don't know if it's going to be counterfeit or not, but this is an org that, especially with the coaching changes, and bringing in Peter Dunn, they really, heavily invest themselves in that, pride themselves on scouting, talent development, all of these good things that you like to hear for building NA talent. So, the stated fact of like, yeah, they're selling me on this. Everybody had better be selling you on their team's newest hot rookie, for sure at the beginning of the split. And the cool thing is that Danny is actually putting up, and the strengths that they mentioned are actually showing here. So I really like that aspect of it, because they were kind of lukewarm before on the bottom lane situation, and this does feel like a good direction for the team to go. A lot of focus for this team and a lot of conversation continually gets drawn back to Jizuke, and I also like how they address this themselves of coming out and speaking on, we don't want to, pull Jizuke back because we don't want to lose the benefits,
the killer edge
of this player. Yeah. And I think that everyone would agree there needs to be some work done here. Maybe honing might be a good word, or
they neither know, man. You watch 3 play
oh
files,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
With where they're talking
they need
about
an Nick Smithy that's
exactly.
don't do this good play while they make this game winning historically
no man's not right all
play.
The time, but you do need a no man.
You need the no man to make you think about it, right?
Yeah.
To make you like sure that it's gonna be the right thing. And it was funny because Corejj was tweeting out like no man is like the underrated role. Everyone needs a no man, and I agree. Like it's good to have those crazy guys who are just like, yeah, I'll go for it. Screw it. I'll dive. But you also do need someone
being like,
keep on the leash a little bit. You gotta be like, no, get back here, Jizuke. Here's
where I was going with it, because it needs some calibration on being on your percentage of risk averse versus risk tolerance, basically. Mm-hmm. And it feels
versus Jizuke. Risk averse versus Jizuke.
He's like, the risk tolerance for Jizuke is like
nothing's
insane.
A risk, baby.
I've never seen anyone be able to go toe to toe with this man in risk tolerance. It's like,
when you're graphing something and suddenly you're like, wait, I need to switch to logarithmic because this person is just like way up here, like a factor of 10x. Like that's the Jizuke on the graph.
What risk? Are you kidding me?
I only see benefits. I see no risk.
Just a little calibration on that is, and I don't even want it to get down to normal levels of normal people. You just need it to be judged in a similar scale.
You don't want him off the Jizuke scale.
I still want him on Jizuke scale.
Just the lower end of the Jizuke scale.
Just like a few less pickoffs in the mid game.
A few less game losing ints down, but keep the crazy.
But still keep those bangers.
Keep the Akali games.
I disagree. I like the base combat. They're always fighting and dying in the bases.
I'm such a Jizuke fan. I actually love watching him. As much as people have been flaming him, I want him to get credit for all the positives too. And I'm fully aware that he's like sprinted some of these games away, that they were in a great position. But damn, like his Akali fights, this weekend were so good. Mm-hmm. And he does deserve credit for some of the games where it's like, oh, he actually just 1v9'd because he's willing to do some crazy stuff that saves the game, right? Like when he's going back in on Akali with like 10, 20% health at that 3v3 to prevent Soul, I think it was against TL.
I think that was a 7-dragon game. I think.
Yeah, it was a 7-dragon game, right, where they got 4 straight dragons after losing the first 3. Fighting their way out of these crazy situations. That even in that game, he did have a time or two where he had an int, but like. I just think he's so entertaining to watch. I really love watching him as a player.
And they went 2-1 this weekend, only losing to 100 Thieves, who, as we just said, is probably the best team right now. So, the 0-3 to a 2-1, it's not that bad of a start.
All right, FlyQuest. They got perfect game by C9. They beat TSM, who wasn't first at the time, before Mark actually banned them. And then they turn around and they lose to Golden Guardians.
Yeah, let's frame that for a minute.
Recap.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of them exactly either, because I want to start believing more in this team. Like, I like Licorice. Jose Diodo is very aggressive and has good mechanics. I thought the bot lane substitution that they made in the offseason was good, or at the end of the last season was good. And I want to believe in Palafox, who has some good games. But when you have the perfect game, when you have the loss to Golden Guardians, it's just like, it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. You know, it's just like, are you improving? I can't.
The way that you're phrasing this, I feel like correctly encapsulates the issue right now, is that in looking at these individual pieces, you have confidence and you want it to be able to come together. But what they're lacking for me is that coordination and dedication to some individual goal. Like, go into this game, this specific game, out of your draft with your draft goals, into your level 1 goals, into your mid-game goals, and how are we actually winning this game? Because it still feels like a bunch of individuals rather than a team. And that is one of the most cliche things to ever say in any sport. And yet, there's a reason why it became that way. It is a constant issue in so many teams. And I think this is one of the teams that really does kind of encapsulate that very, very closely. So I think there's a good direction to go. I am a bit biased for the Palafox direction and for wanting to go mid-jungle very heavy for this team. But I will keep pushing that, and especially with how so many teams are beating up on Licorice right now. I really want them to put a lot of effort in their draft and their early game planning in trying to use that mid-jungle to start to control a win condition for themselves, and then decide on, are we playing topside Rift Herald? Are we playing dragon stacking? And really just, come out with an identity and the decision to stick to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say. That TSM game started making me believe again, then right back to the Golden Guardians loss. I was like, all right.
Yeah, big agree. I mean, I think the shot calling has pretty clearly been a problem. They need to get on the same page. Hopefully they can keep building on that. Continuing with some of the bizarre ups and downs. Immortals 3-0. Now they go 0-3. Like, are we walking back kind of how we felt after week 1? Do you think this week was the fluke?
I called it on the lane by lane that we did.
What'd you call?
I called it is going to be the biggest change from week 1.
I always doubted them.
Biggest change from week 1 to week 2. Boom. It's smack dab right in the middle. I will say that, Andre came out taking some responsibility for the drafts. I do like their policy, by the way, as far as wanting to reward academy players for super positive play and not make the switches about a super negative thing that, one of the starters does. I actually really like that direction, but they didn't really set themselves up for success this weekend, it felt like, and definitely fumbled in a couple different places. So I do still think that they are better than our pre-summer ranking of them, but not as crazy as the week 1 literal record-setting success that they had.
It was a delicious soup, but week 2 you found fly in it. So
or the entree came out and the steak was undercooked or overcooked.
So they were the appetizer in week 1?
Week 1's appetizer was good.
You guys are not selling me with these food metaphors.
Okay, they were both terrible.
Moving on. Broxa, CLG.
Yeah, everybody loves Broxa. That's a delicious entree right there. Did you see his interview with Travis? I really liked it. I liked the honesty. I liked the emotion. He was even saying, I know you gave me the option to not do this right now because it was a hard loss, but like a lot of the best interviews are those kind of raw ones. And he gave a really good one, and he talked about like how much it hurt and like how much they needed this win. It was against Cloud9. That was the 40-something minute game. We talked about it a little bit with Cloud9. Brox had played this incredible Lee Sin game, and they were so close to winning, and they made a number of mistakes, team mistakes, individual errors that prevented them from closing this game. And just like his desire to have basically this feel good moment was what came across most to me, that like they wanted this so bad to kind of be that like spark that can maybe turn things around, because things have been going so bad for CLG and it's rough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like the fan base. I haven't gone on the CLG subreddit in a minute, but like most of the times you check in there, it's a pretty like kind of on fire. It feels like a lot of the time. And so, for Brox to, talking about this game versus CLG, it would have been something to be like, hey, like we're still okay. Like I can see why he said that. And even for him individually, this is the best he's looked in a while, actually. I think he's playing better right now than even some of his TL games where, he felt invisible and it was like TL was winning around him. I actually feel like he's actively making insanely sin plays.
He's a sickly sin.
Yeah, and like it's nuts how much of an influence he's having in these games right now. And then they're still not winning, which is why I think it's extra painful. I
was going to raise it from, yes, they really wanted that win, but I think they needed it. That interview is the best interview that we have had in a long time. There was so much emotion and truth coming through in his words, in his facial expression, in his eyes. This was if it was a movie or an actor or something, we win an Academy Awards because of how genuine he was being. And especially combining that with some of the things that we're hearing from, practice and scrims that's going on with these teams, I really think that one hit them hard. Seeing them after on the stage, they definitely needed that. I'm very, very now worried that the team is gonna have a hard time pulling out of this downward spiral. And it's kind of heartbreaking because Broxa, like you're saying, is putting up 110% with these performances. A lot of effort into the planning, into the early game, into where are we ganking first, how are we going to use that and leverage this to get a win. But man, it is it's definitely one of the pulling at your heartstrings stories right there for them. And they really needed some good news.
Yeah. I'll give you some good news, though. It's not for CLG. Golden Guardians is 2-4, which you might be like, hey, that's actually not good, Mark. But when you look at their previous record in Spring Split, which is, I think Freak pointed this out. They went from 3-15, in 18 games to 2-4 in 6. So, they already are one win behind their whole entire spring record. And I think it's just cool to see. It speaks a little bit to probably some individual improvements, team improvements, as well as just how good Solo can be.
Solo is a huge upgrade.
He's a huge upgrade. And like you just watch some of his team fighting, his laning, and like he obviously is LCS caliber and can help teams in a lot of ways. While I don't know what his future is. Like I think this is a very good like, hey guys, don't forget me when I was out for spring.
And Iconic said it himself in the interview afterwards. The communication is key. He's a veteran. Him and Chime talk a lot, and that's clearly helping this team a lot.
All right, we got anchor questions here. We got a ton from you guys this week, so I want to say thank you. We are kind of keeping those, and if we get a bunch of good questions built up, we'll maybe do a Q&A or something cool, because we are getting a lot of questions sent in. I know you guys want us to get your questions. We can't get to them all each week, so we have to pick a couple. First one, though, is going to come from Isaac Chan.
I want to hear you guys argue over what was the best rework gameplay and lore-wise, who was the most annoying pre-rework champ, and which champion needs a rework the most. I'm going to go with Sion, AP Tristana, and Shyvana.
Best rework, boom. Submitting my answer before everyone else, Warwick.
Oh.
If you hadn't thought of Warwick, then you're going to have a big moment.
I was going to say it.
Because he also mentioned with the lore, oh my God, both the actual in-game implementation of the Warwick plus the trailer and the lore.
Well, just
that is insane.
The visuals too. He went from just being like a kind of like stiff werewolf guy who like teleported over when he used his ult on you to like this like feral like with a big metal claw like lunging at you, like just visually everything about it, and the gameplay being much more compelling.
You also feel hunted, like when he pops the blood set and you like hear your screen kind of does that little pulse thing and you hear some stuff. It's like
I'm gonna get yeeted on just out of the blue.
It's hype.
I think I'm a negative person, so I'm going to go another direction. Okay. I'm sad about Soraka. I forget exactly what they changed about the lore. I liked being a Q spamming idiot in a solo lane, shredding MR and just bah, and I miss when there was Graves. Actually, that's not a good answer. I miss old Graves too. But when you had Soraka Graves bot lane, just feeding him mana to buckshot the wave and just be this idiot. Oh, that was my stuff because I was bad at the game.
So you're submitting a worse.
Yeah, I said I'm negative.
I'll definitely agree with you on as far as just stars falling.
It just looks so cool when
the
there's
stars
like 10
used
of
to
them
fall.
down.
Stars, there's no stars falling now. It's
You
some
can just
weird
like
circle.
You make a compelling argument. There are no stars falling.
Starfall should be a bunch of stars falling.
Cool, like these
They're lying to you. What do they think? You're some kind of chump? You're not going to notice there's no more stars?
Can't fool me.
No, not going to get that one past Kobe.
Where's the cigar?
Can't get that one past me.
Where's Graves' cigar?
Kobe's got his eyeballs and he's going to use them. There's no stars. This rework sucks. Most annoying pre-rework. I feel like old Fiora was pretty damn annoying. The ulti, like where you're doing like like where it's just like untargetable and just doing that kind of like zip dash around thing.
It was also buggy.
It's
annoying.
For me, I love that because I played a lot of
playing it.
Omni Knight.
Didn't like getting one.
What's the?
I think you got it right for Dota. Yeah.
Because now Omni Knight.
Juggernaut. You're thinking Juggernaut.
Yeah,
with Omni Slash.
Yeah, Omni Slash is the thing. Yeah.
Omni Slash.
Omni Knight was the Guardian Angel thing for everybody. But anyways, for Juggernaut, I always was like, oh, I'm right in there with the Fiora as well. Same thing, and I liked building Tiamat on, and then your ultimate splash.
Fun to play
as well.
Not fun to get one shot by.
True. Is new Fiora more fun to get chased down and a bunch of true damage procs?
I actually think so. I feel like there's more of an ability to answer it, right? Like,
get my back against the wall. Don't get back there.
Well, and like when Fiora does like the instant vital proc combos you see like on the LPL servers, you're just like, oh my god, that was insane. Versus like old Fiora was like, oh, you pressed R on me, okay.
Which champion needs a rework the most? Mumu?
I mean, the Shyvana one's good because I think, people talk about like dragons in the game and how she's like, not quite just like full blown dragon. And the other one's Aurelion Soul, space dragon. Like it'd be nice to just be a dragon.
I could see the Shyvana one.
A typical lore dragon, whether Eastern or Western mythology, I don't really care, but I just want to be a dragon.
All right. Next question. This one comes from Charan Pandigunta.
Hey guys, big fan. I wanted to ask a little bit about nerfs. How did you, as former pro players and also MarkZ, deal with nerfs in competitive games? Like the really high stakes ones, the 50-minute grinders, game 5 and a best of 5, something like that. I personally get extremely nervous with sweaty hands and everything in my crappy platinum solo queue games. I can't imagine how difficult it is for pro players to deal with nerfs. Is that something the coach helps with, or is that something each person just has to learn on their own? Yeah, that was my question. Big fan, like I said, and I hope you guys have a great day.
So for me, it was about the lead up to games where I would get really nervous. And I had kind of like a little ritual that I would do. Like I would always go to the stage as late as they would allow me to, and I would like listen to music, and I would kind of get into the zone a little bit.
Did you have a meal? Did you have like chicken nuggets you had to eat before every meal?
Nothing like that. It was literally just I wanted to think about anything except the game. And music helped me do that, because if I was focusing on the game in the lead up to the game and sitting there for an hour and I'm just like, oh my god, it just like I'd psych myself out. So I actually realized that like I do all my preparation, I do everything I need to do, and then once I've done that, I don't even want to think about it again until I play. And then beyond that, I actually found once I was in game, I was no longer nervous. Like there was maybe like a little bit more nerves, but the biggest thing is like, because I had played so much, it just became so like routine. Like it's just like you're not even thinking about it, you're just acting, right?
Your actual
like
mind's off. And
yeah, exactly. Like I literally played like 50,000, 60,000 arenas, right? Like this was my life. So you get to this point where like I care way more about losing in other games than I ever did in WoW, because even with like an incredible win rate, I could have lost, like, you play 60,000 games, you lose 15,000 games, you have a really good win rate, but you've still lost 15,000 games, right? Like
Azael, a world champion, has lost more arena than most players will ever play. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely true. So to me, it was like avoid overthinking, and then once I'm in the game, I'm good. I'm just gonna do what I got to do.
Mine, I'm probably different from a lot of people. I just get super excited for it. Like I just look forward to it so much. And so it's almost the opposite route of you. Is I love like theory crafting and would come up with all these plans, jungle routes, and I want to surprise them with this. And then I could also do this if this happens. And I just get like super excited and amped up. And it actually works. Like I just like build up energy until we get into the game. But then it's similar to you in that once we start, it just takes over. You're not. It feels like there's no fluctuation or other thoughts and worries don't pop into your head. You're just playing what you've always played, and your reactions are what your reactions are. And yes, maybe I would use 10% of the prep that I did or of the things that I thought of, but that I had these possibilities always felt like a good thing. I would say that the side effect of me like getting so excited would be that literally Chowster would have to like stop my leg moving and stuff. You're because kicking the whole I do like I wouldn't even notice that I'm getting so physical sitting up there and at land. Your teammates that are sitting next to you are like, holy shit, like my mouse is shaking and stuff like that. Earthquake.
So the funny thing is about you guys being pro players is and I've heard of this from a lot of pro players, obviously, is like, you kind of get into the flow state or whatever you want to call it, where you're not really conscious. And then when they stop playing pro or they get subbed out for a little bit or they move on to being a coach, it is so much worse because you do not go into that state. You are 100% conscious the whole time and you're listening to comms and you are crapping your pants as a coach because you are just watching your team play and there's nothing you can do anymore. There's no timeouts you can call. You have zero influence over the game. And back when I coached, even my first split, we didn't even run on stage. You couldn't even like do draft. You just like went up there and you prepped them. Yeah. And so like, for that, it's a lot of like you're saying about ritual, not even just like that, but doing your preps. So like you go over pick ban one time. You don't want to like freak your players out by talking about it too much. You will go over that one time, go after some general tendencies, give them like their little pointers, like watch out when he does this. He likes to do that kind of thing. And you just try and let them give them space and stuff. But like as a coach inside, the same thing's happening. You're dying inside. You're crapping your pants. Like back on those curse days, like a lot of us would get physically sick from nerves, and like we were all in that same camp of like, all right, I'm gonna go throw up real quick, be right back. And like, where'd you go? Oh, I just ran to the bathroom. You don't want to freak anyone else out.
Can I go throw up? Now Mark's there.
No. He's just running to the bathroom real quick and ignore the heaving noises.
I could definitely relate to this a lot as well, because I feel like the biggest thing since changing to being a caster has been that all of that excitement and energy and theory crafting and stuff, all it really does now is cause me to lose sleep. And so my biggest thing is going in and sleep is my biggest determining factor now. If I am super tired or I have only gotten a few hours of sleep or keep waking up and thinking of different things, those are the ones where I'll be thinking one thing, saying a different thing, or buying more time, filling more filler words, and all this stuff is it really does stem from so much of that. And I never even thought about it before, but like the same kind of setup of like the excitement and all of that leads into the issue and not having the same outlet for it.
It's really interesting. I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but like just one small point for me on you talking about your experience as a coach. There was formats that came in for WoW. Originally, it was just like you had 3 players on your team and you would play. And then a lot of tournaments started doing 4 players. And luckily for me, like I almost always played because like Warlocks just kind of fit in comps. But like sometimes I wouldn't. And I found it 100 times as stressful. Yeah. Not being able to like control. That was the biggest thing for me, was the feeling of the loss of control. Like I have no impact on whether or not they're going to win the game. And I've just got to live with it. And that was really hard for me to let go of.
Yeah, and I think for like you're living vicariously as a player or coach when you're not playing the game, is like you want these people to succeed. And so like when they fail, sometimes it's like just as heartbreaking, if not more so, because you're like, like I know how you feel, but like you couldn't even have done anything about it necessarily.
Yep. All right, we got some Twitter questions here. I really like that question. Well, it's fun to talk about the pro days. To reminisce.
Let the old man reminisce.
Yeah, we have an old man
Okay,
episode.
Grandpa, we know. All right, Apollo Fox, this one's from him, says, build a team from the bottom 5 teams, 1 player from each team. Let me pull up the standings right now so we actually...
My laptop died.
Yeah, I was gonna say both in my me and Mark's laptops are dead right now. These are just
so
for
the bottom 5 is FlyQuest, Digging Toss, EG, Golden Guardian, CLG. So you can pick one player from each team. So let me think. I'm gonna go
Afro.
I'm gonna go Impact. I'm gonna go Impact from EG. I'm gonna go Afro from Dig. I like that. I'll go Jose Diodo from FlyQuest, and then we need
mid and AD carry.
Our mid and our ADC. I'll go Turtle from CLG, and then I guess
I might go the other way. 6A Pobelter?
6A Pobelter instead of... I think I like a Blaze Olive and Wild Turtle. There might be a better permutation.
I feel like this is a good one because there's a lot of things you could say, like, okay, give me Solo because I've seen him in, like, I'll get rid of Impact.
And you want
I
Jizuke
feel like
instead
maybe
or something?
Jizuke is a bigger
difference.
I mean, you're volatile still, but at least like you have a little bit more firepower in the mid lane. This is an interesting one.
It's a cool question. I'm just gonna go with my gut. I'm not gonna overthink it. So my team is what I said. You guys have any swap ups?
I'd maybe do the one that I just talked about there. I feel like there's a couple good top laners in the bottom.
So
even Licorice, you could say.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then you'd lose Jose Diodo.
Right. So
but you could get Svenskeren instead.
Right. So I think there's some flexibility. I would probably do the Solo for Jizuke.
Yeah, I think I might do that one. Yeah, I really like Solo.
Yep. Solo's really good. All right, cool question. Next one comes from Straw Hat Alec. Do you think there's too many abilities in the game that negate damage? Xin, Gwen, Samira, etc. Do you think it's making the game more or less skill-based having to play around those CDs?
I think maybe some adjustments to them. Gwen just came out, and so there might be some adjustments there. Xin Zhao's ultimate has been the same for a long time. Hasn't had a lot of problems until they added the super long dash. That's more of a contributor. So I really like the idea and incorporating abilities like that, where it should be a really skill expressive move, where you have iframes basically that you have to work around and you can counter things with it. If it becomes a blanket, then it's poorly implemented in my opinion. So I think adjustments there. I wouldn't like throw out that class of abilities though.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with like a single button that you press. It's your oh crap button, and you use that to outplay someone, and the other people have to take that oh crap button into account. I feel like that's fine. And for Gwen, the problem for me is like the damage. It's like how strong she is, not the actual W ability. Like maybe she gets too many resists in it, or maybe some of those things. I have a way bigger problem with Viego because it's literally brain off iframes for no reason every time you grab a soul, and there's no thinking, there's no planning around it. You just grab the soul and you go invulnerable for a little bit and heal a bunch. And that to me is not thinking. That's just playing the game and getting that for free. And I hate that it's also unstoppable once you start your jump. You can't like flame out of it. Yep. I think there's a lot of BS around his ultimate that will eventually get pruned out if I was going to bet on anything. And in particular, I hate the unstoppable pressing the ult and you can't just... Absolutely for escapes. Yeah, I hate it in laning phase.
Well, and especially with this tank build, right?
Yeah, like you just press R, you're unkillable.
It's actually so obnoxious.
Yeah. I think the only thing I was going to add was that a lot of your thinking is supposed to be when you're about to pick up the soul, what champion are you picking up? How are you going to use that in the future? And use your brain power there.
There are cool situations. I think Perkz used it really well a few times, like grabs Leona. He's at his blades of support. He stuns the ADC. But in a lot of cases, what I hate that it devolves into is grab the soul for invulnerability, R reset. Okay, jump into another soul for invulnerability, R reset, press it again.
Use their gap closer, get close to them.
Yeah. And the situations in which they actually do something creative with the abilities are really cool. I just wish it was more like, you pick a soul, you are locked into that for a longer time. You don't just get like the instant R reset, you know what I mean? Or like, so you got to maybe be more selective about it or do something interesting with that champion before you just like go to the next one and just keep doing something. So maybe there's some things they could rework there.
Yeah.
But that'll wrap it up for this episode of The Dive. Thank you, Honda, for making this episode, as well as all the others, possible. It's been really fun to be back in studio. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscribe on youtube.com/LCS. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. Keep sending us the questions, the takes. As I said, we'll save some up. Maybe we'll do a Q&A episode if we get a bunch of good ones saved up. And finally, make sure if you have any hot takes, we're definitely down to take those on Anchor.fm as well. We got a bunch of questions this week, but hot takes also cool. The LCS continues with its third week this Friday at 3 p.m. PST. It is Cloud9 versus EG. And we will see you again here for the dive next Tuesday, 5 a.m. Pacific.
Bright and early.
Bright and early.
Extremely bright.